anything else. But yeah,
I can understand, and
Yeah.
they just raised the fee for renewal.
oh, when I was doing it, it was $80. I remember correct because back then I thought it was astronomical.
What, 125 now?
It's going up to 125.
125 by July 1st.
That's actually not that bad because in 2003 it was $80. That's less than 50%
I
over
was paying
15 years.
85 rate.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, I am Director of Information Security at UNOS. I've been there for a little over 5 years. Before that, I was the CISO for, give me a second, I wasn't there very long, Capstone, the home mortgage company. Before that, I was Deputy CIO of Chesterfield County. Before that, I was the Director of Network Operations for McGuire Woods, and for a brief period of time, interim CIO for McGuire Woods. UNOS is a great organization, and it's a great organization to apply the trade of information security. Some of it is, actually, go ahead and click the slide, say a little bit about who we are. It's a small organization. We're a nonprofit. We have about 370 employees, about 500 volunteers, and the role of those 500 volunteers we'll talk about in a few minutes. We have been in business for 35 years and 1 week. 1 week ago today, we celebrated our 35th anniversary of founding the company. The company was founded initially to bid on the new federal contract to act as the Organ Procurement Transplantation Network for the United States. It is a contract that is overseen by the Health Resource Services Administration, which is part of HRSA, which is part of HHS. We have had that contract since then, and we're the only ones that have ever had the contract. We're a membership organization. The value monetarily of that contract is less than 10% of our annual budget. It's not a very big contract, which makes finding people to compete with us on it probably difficult, because you've got to have a significant investment coming in, and you're not going to recoup much of it. Most of our revenues come from, we're a membership organization. If you would like to procure organs for transplantation in the United States, if you wish to perform organ transplants in the United States, or as an institution, not as an individual, or you would, you wish to perform lab or histocompatibility lab work as part of organ transplantation in the United States, you're required to be a member of UNOS, and there's membership fees that are associated with that. But the bulk of it comes from hospitals and insurance companies that pay a registration fee for a candidate that needs an organ transplant to be placed on our wait list. That's where the majority of our revenue comes from. Next slide. What we do, and this will all tie into InfoSec, trust me. We maintain the National Transplant Wait List. And just to dispel an urban myth, and before I came to work here, I was as ignorant as anybody about what that actually was. There isn't like this big, long wait list, but I think currently it's like 112,000 people that are registered and waiting for organ transplants. It's not this long list of 112,000 people. The list of candidates is generated real time. When an organ is donated, the information, the clinical information on the donor and on that organ is entered into our system. We run matches against all the candidates to see who it's compatible with, and we generated a ordered list based on that, and then offers start going out, electronic offers start going out to physicians that this organ is available. They look to see whether or not it's one that they want for their patient, and they are under a clock. They've got to move because these have reasonably short shelf life depending on the organ. to make a decision about either, yes, I'm going to accept it, or no, I'm going to decline it. And it keeps going down that list until the physician accepts it. Or occasionally, sadly, nobody accepts it. And the organ in that case is discarded, which is sad. And that's one of the things that we also work on to try to improve the acceptance rate of organs. Because even an organ that is not perfect, your chances of survival is greater. You know, if you stay on the wait list and you never get an organ, that is a terminal state to be in. So, so anyway, we do a lot of things. I'm not going to get into all of that. Try to improve the acceptance rate on organs as well with physicians. But anyway, we maintain the wait list. We have a policy department that works with those 500 volunteers. Those 500 volunteers make up members of our board of directors and our committees. And the committees are organ-centric committees, and they're made up of physicians, transplant physicians, organ procurement professionals. There's representation from donor families and living donors, as well as organ recipients. And those are the people that create policy to try to improve organ allocation in the United States. So we have a policy department that helps these committees to draft policy for organ allocation for the United States. We monitor all of our members for compliance. We create all these policies. We also have a part of the company that basically goes on the road all the time, and they visit transplant hospitals and procurement organizations, and they ensure that policy is being followed with how they allocate and transplant organs. We have a large research department. The research department does data analytics. We have a lot of data. We have databases that have billions of elements in it. We have data on every transplant that has ever occurred in the United States. We have data on every candidate that has ever been on the wait list. You know, those that were transplanted and those that weren't. As you can imagine, as we start tying back to why information security is important to us, we have a lot of sensitive data. Anyway, so we have a research department that analyzes that data, looks for trends, and that analysis informs changes in allocation policy to try to improve allocation in the United States. We have a communications department whose sole responsibility is communicating what we do with the public. All of our policies, any changes to our policies have to go through a public comment cycle. And so there's a lot of public communication that has to happen with that. We have a group of professional educators whose responsibility is to educate transplant professionals on the policies. You know, how do you implement these policies, to how do you use our systems. And we also, just as a generic thing, we promote organ availability within the community. Now, to give you sort of a breakdown, I mentioned there's about 370 employees that UNOS currently paid staff workforce. And about 150 of that 370 are IT. We're a very IT-heavy organization. Part of it is because the systems that we do for matching donated organs with candidates and transplants, nobody else is doing it. So Microsoft doesn't have an app for it, and so we have to write it. So all of the policy implementation has to be implemented by us, by our software engineering teams. So we have a large software engineering department. We write a lot of code. Another green field of opportunity for an information security professional. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Why we exist. This is just the latest stats. I literally just got this yesterday, which is why I decided to stick it in here. As of the end of last year, the blue line, which is on the bottom, are the number of donors that we recovered organs from. As you can see, it's increasing, but it's still a fairly flat line. The number of transplants performed is going up, but going up slowly, going up more recently. Each of the last 5 years has been a record number of transplants in the United States. And then the top line, black line, is the number of folks that are candidates that are waiting for transplant at the end of each of those years. And it was, like I said, around 112, 114,000 this year. At the end of 2018, we did 36,000 transplants. So as you can see, and also that number went up a lot faster than the number of organs that were available and the number of transplants that were occurred. There's a lot of reasons for all of that. We have a very large, very well-educated research staff that their primary job is to try to make these numbers better every year. It's a challenging job. But anyway, so I mentioned that IT is about 150 of our roughly 370 employees. InfoSec for a company our size is about 7, which sounds like a lot for a 370 person company. You were mentioning you would love to get to a 100-to-1 ratio. We're at about a 50-to-1 ratio right now, and we can't possibly do all the work we need to do. So that's sort of one of the challenges that we have. When I started 5 years ago, we had a fairly mature information security program in a couple of areas. One was infrastructure. We were doing 802.1x and restricting devices by certificates. We had our own PKI, and it would have been very difficult for someone to put a rogue machine on our network, which is great. One thing that we didn't do a very good job of 5 years ago was look at the source code of the applications that we wrote. And so we implemented a application security program 5 years ago. It is taking a while to get to a level of maturity, but we're getting there. We also did a huge step increase in security awareness based employees. I think that at one point there was a culture at UNOS where we have a good InfoSec team. They're the people that do InfoSec. And if anybody does InfoSec for a living, if you're the only one in your organization doing InfoSec, you're going to fail. You're going to fail miserably. And it scared the crap out of me. And so there was a lot of education around the responsibilities of the employees that they had. We did kind of a human firewall campaign. We started phishing our employees on a regular basis. I mean, literally continuously, with some good effect. That's actually one of the better metrics that we got. But anyway, the fact that we've got billions of records of PHI, we are the only national registry of healthcare outside of a payer in the United States. So I consider us to be a juicy target. Anyway, and that's what I get paid to do. So what I wanted to do today was talk about the security program as a whole and talk about what is the most important part of your information security program. I have an opinion on most things, but that doesn't mean they're correct. But I have an opinion about what I think is the most important part of my security program. But I'd like to kind of go through some of the pieces that make up our program, and then have you guys chime in whenever you want about the different pieces in this area that you have and what's really important to you and why. And hopefully, I expect I'm going to learn something. So at UNOS, we have 3 major areas of activity divided up into program management. That's the security program itself, the management of that program. And we'll talk about the pieces that go into it, what they make up in a minute. Prevention. These are all the activities that the information security staff, technologies, and the other UNOS employees take to prevent bad things from happening. And then detection and response. This is when something bad did happen, can you find it and can you respond and contain it control it and keep it from being catastrophic. To put this into perspective and why this is so important for us, and we take, obviously, you know, everybody's familiar with the CIA. I think it's part of the CISSP exam. So, you know, the confidentiality obviously is important because we have, like I said, billions of records of data of PHI on U.S. citizens as well as some citizens from the EU, which obviously has impact as well. The confidentiality of that data is very, very important. Integrity. If that data is maliciously changed, someone could die. You know, you get the wrong organ transplant, the wrong person, and killed. So obviously that's really important. Availability. If our system is compromised and unavailable for a significant period of time, organ transplants in the United States won't come to a complete stop, but the numbers that the network is capable of supporting, the network of procurement organizations and transplant centers, histocompatibility labs, is going to be severely inhibited, and people will wait longer to get transplants and people could die. So that's sort of why I fortunately have got really, really good executive support, and we can talk about that and how important that is to your program. That is critically important. I didn't have it as my most important, you know, but that executive support for the program has to recognize the importance of what it is to the mission of the organization that you do. And I don't have to, I'm very, very fortunate because I've been places where this is not the case, where I have to make senior leadership in our company understand the value of what it is information security does. Next slide.
Richard, before you go on,
Yeah.
You mentioned that you have donors or transplants from the UK.
Oh yeah, not a lot, but we do have some.
So you have to abide by GDPR.
GDPR, yes, GDPR is a big deal for us. And we have spent a fair amount of time over the last year, well, since last May, trying to really understand it. And I would hesitate to say that we do. I don't know that we do. And I think until there are some court cases that happen, I don't know that anybody is going to really understand it. I know that there have been some fines that have been levied, some fairly large fines, and particularly against American companies for violations of GDPR. We're kind of a niche. We're not the type of organization that the EU was looking at or looking. I mean, we don't sell the data we have to anybody. We don't commercialize that information in any way. So I don't think that we're really who they're looking at. There are some, we use a lot of the data for research purposes, which has exemptions in GDPR. The EU citizens comes to us, comes to the United States, to a transplant center in the United States to have a transplant. We're not sending anybody there. And so they're providing the information here for services here. It was funny, you know, when it first passed, I remember talking to our general counsel about it. I mean, like right before it passed. And he gave me this quizzical look about how it would be enforced. He said that would be like the EU passing a law that said EU citizens couldn't drive over 25 while in the United States. How on earth could you possibly ever enforce that? And so what the impact of this, I think it's going to be years and years before we know. The one thing that I do think that it will do is I think it will stimulate again the conversations around the U.S. for national policies around privacy instead of them being individual states, because they vary wildly throughout the U.S. And there is no national
There is not.
Yeah, there is none, yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, it's okay. All of this, trust me, I'd rather talk about this stuff than anything. So program management, in our program management.
Richard, I think Michelle has a question.
I'm
I was
sorry.
gonna say on the same topic, I know California passed something
Yeah, they
very
do.
similar to GDPR.
It is.
So,
It is.
that would have effect as well.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's a sort of interesting, right, in the fact that because we are basically a national registry of sensitive information, there are 50 states, and Puerto Rico is part of this as well, and they all have different privacy laws and regulations. California's tend to be the most restrictive. And I can tell you for us, we typically, because we're not going to have 50 different sets of controls, we're not going to have 50 sets of policies, we're going to have one. And so it needs to be as effectively the most restrictive. And we use HIPAA obviously as a guideline. I can tell you some great stories about UNOS and HIPAA if we have time. But California is basically the measuring stick that we're using because it is the most restrictive. New York has some proposed legislation that is also very, very restrictive. I don't know if that's going to pass or not. But yeah, California is a they sort of set the standard, and other states tend to follow later.
I know New York was discussing,
Yeah.
like you said, I don't know if it passed or not. And I know there's something in Virginia as well, but I think it kind of died.
Yeah, Virginia would be a tough state. Virginia will not be a leader in this area. But we're incorporated in Virginia, so there is the vast majority of the data that we have are not Virginia residents.
You see, most of the things you have to deal with, really directing how you do what you do. You just end up getting it so tight it actually restricts what you do.
That's a good question. We don't see a whole lot that impacts how we do what we do. To a certain extent, although HIPAA is a very unprescriptive law, it doesn't tell you how to do anything. And it tells you there's a lot of reasonableness involved, and so that's sort of subjective. But the other thing that we have that probably has a greater impact on us as far as regulations and things that we follow is our contract with the federal government. So, and I could spend hours talking about that, but there are very specific requirements. In fact, I was telling Ivan that Monday starts a new contract for us. We went out, we bid on the contract again last year. It was awarded to us over the fall, and the new contract starts on April 1st. Why it starts on April 1st is a convoluted story too, but within the contract there's a proposed work statement as part of that contract, and that proposed workstation statement is like 200 pages, and but that's covering everything that we do, everything from how our board is set up to how our committees work to everything. And but the single largest section is on privacy and security, the single largest section of that proposed work statement. And as we were going through responding to the RFP, then we were awarded the bid. Then we have to negotiate the terms of the contract with the federal government. That section was always referred to as, that's Richard's section, which at times was a very lonely place to be. But that is more prescriptive about how we do certain things. So I mean, for example, in something that's new in it this year, it required that any cryptographic module that we use in any way with the system has to have a FIPS validation number. We have to provide the federal government with our FIPS validation number. If it was FIPS compliant before, they were okay. Now we've actually got to, so we've got to go back and look, okay, well, we know that it's compliant, but have they gone through the trouble to get validated for it? And we've got some that aren't. And so we've got to do things because of that. So that's the most prescriptive thing that we have as a contract.
Richard, is that contract with a specific federal agency?
Yes, it's with the health, it's operated by the Health Resource Services Administration, which is part of HHS. We ultimately, the only person in the government that can direct us to do things outside of our board is the Secretary of HHS. They can tell us, you need to change the policy to do this. That's happened. Actually, it's never really happened. They've asked us to examine and provide an opinion about a policy based on a lawsuit, which had happened. But no, I don't think the Secretary has ever dictated a policy to us, but they're the only one that the Secretary of HHS is the only one that could. So anyway, our program development and information security consists of things like what is the scope of our responsibility? Who do we report to? Just sort of like, what basically how the program put together. Key processes, everything from how we respond to alerts to how we have a certificate of revocation with CRL process that we have to follow once a year to remove expired certificates from the organization. I mean, all of that stuff is all part of program management. And then policies and standards. These are our information security policy itself. These are our baseline, security baseline configurations of systems, things like that. So all of that kind of goes into program management, and it's sort of foundational to everything else that we do. This is working out, all right, isn't it? Prevention is where some of the fun stuff happens. So in prevention, we have programs around awareness and training, security awareness, like we talked about. We had actually, I think it was Slate who did it's really interesting. So we rotate pen testing around. We do pen testing every year, and we rotate that around. I've been there 5 years, and we've never had the same organization do it twice. At some point, we're going to have to come back to the same organization. Slate was one of the ones that did it, and it's interesting when you do a bunch of different companies to do that for you, you find out that some are really good at some things, some are really good at other things. One of the things that Slate just nailed for us, better than anybody else we've ever used, was fishing. They fished. We also gave them a larger sample than anybody else we ever did. We basically gave them the entire company with the sample. And up till then, we sort of throttled it back. But I don't know if Ivan remembers, but I did. They had a click rate on their phishing campaign, and they put a lot of effort into it, of 30%. And we scared the hell out of the directors with that stat. And we use that as leverage that this is something that we need to do all the time. So we went out and we got a package, a commercial package, for us to develop our own phishing campaigns. And we fish all of our employees all of the time. We've gotten the click rate down from the worst case. I don't remember. Do you remember what year that was?
2016.
It might be. Yeah, probably. So we went from about 30% in 2016 to we're consistently across most of the levels. We have different levels of phishing campaigns of about 4%. And I don't want anybody to feel good about that. Because 4% is terrible. 4% industry for an industry benchmark is fine, but it's terrible. We have used the data that we've gotten from that to implement policies around personnel performance. If we have 4 tiers, and basically tier 4 is we use inside knowledge of what's going on at units to send very crafty things to really try to trick. We're really going to work hard to try to trick you. To level 1, which is my 3-year-old son ought to be able to recognize that's phishing. And if you are at a lower level, if you're at a level 1 or 2, and you're still continuously clicking on it, you will have had additional training, you will have had coaching from your manager, you would have probably had some sort of a disciplinary action taken. And if you don't get better, you're going to lose your job. Because that's part of the idea that security is everybody's responsibility. And what I've told people in all hands meetings is that UNOS invests millions of dollars in information security, everything from the salaries of the staff to the technologies that we put in place to try to protect and try to prevent bad things that happen. One email gets through and one person clicks on it, it's all wasted. It's all wasted. So it was very important. So I'm not trying to steer you into what I want you to say is most important, but that's clearly very important.
You feel clicking on it or doing anything once you open, you know.
So yeah, there's 2 different things. One, did you open? Actually, there's 3. Did you open the email? Did you report it? That's a plus. If you reported it, we have an abuse email, and we actually have an abuse button on Outlook. So if you click it, if it was one of the ones that we sent, you get a little party thing that goes on your computer. You know, thanking people. We need to do more incentives and rewards for people that are reporting things. I think we're starting to lag on that. If you clicked on the link or opened the file, and then if you clicked on a link and it took you someplace and you put your credentials in. So yeah, there's different levels of failing.
I have seen some of those, and I even had one a couple of years ago when I was going back to school. My message, the DocuSign one, because we use DocuSign,
Yeah.
you know, with the school I went to. And, you know, I was looking at it and it said I filled out all my paperwork 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I looked, you know, I really did examine the email. And then, you know, I contacted the school and I was like, well, I filled this out 2 weeks ago. And that's how I found out it was phishing. And I reported it, but the thing was, is I took that one and compared it to the one I got 2 weeks before.
Yeah.
And you just about couldn't tell the difference.
Was this your company phishing you?
No.
Oh,
This
really?
actually was
Yeah.
a malicious email
Yeah.
that had the whole DocuSign.
Yeah. So it's interesting because we just like this week implemented DocuSign for purchase orders and invoicing. Things like that, and for approvals. And I can almost guarantee you that within the next month, we're going to have a campaign around DocuSign.
But the one I
Yeah.
actually had that was phishing,
Yeah,
it looked, like I said, I compared it to the legitimate one I had 2 weeks before,
yeah.
and they looked exactly
Yeah.
alike.
But you could hover over the link, for example, and you can see there's
See
something,
that it
the
like.
URL was something wrong with that.
Plus just did one
Yeah.
on DocuSign. It caught a lot of.
Yeah, yeah. There are some good ones out there.
We did a good phishing tech or phishing test recently at BDH, where it was coming from Department of Homeland or Human Resource Management, DHRM, saying, since you're a state employee, you get Amazon Prime for free. Click this link to sign up. Open link.
Click right on that.
Yeah.
Open ratio was 70 or 90%.
Wow. Yeah.
Or just to read
Just
people.
to read the email, and a lot of them probably had preview things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like I was on that list. I had
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I think it was about 60% clicked,
Yeah.
10%
Wow.
enter credentials.
That's scary.
Yeah.
That's scary. So you do fishing?
This was our first phishing test.
I will buy you lunch if you catch Debbie.
I had to go back and look at the report.
Yeah. You catch.
Well, she knew that was happening, so.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's the thing is, I don't even know, like, there's a guy on my team that runs it. I don't even know what the campaigns are or when they're going. I know there's campaigns that happen every month, but I don't know the timing. I don't know. And nobody else does either except him, so.
Chandos, what did you use?
We used Vita. They have a system for it.
We had Homeland Security when they went for us last year. And I forgot what they said the percentage was. It wasn't that high because somebody discovered it and sent out an email to everyone. But one of the people that worked on it,
Yeah,
they went into her PC, she had her usernames and passwords in a Word document to every sensitive system, because she had admin rights to everything. And they were able to use that to get into every one of our systems.
oh, my God. There's so much wrong with that.
Yeah, so needless to say, her machine was the first one that was configured with HTA files going to text files, and we put PPAS on it.
Yeah, something. Yeah, that's pretty bad. The awareness thing too. When I talked about the importance of having executive support. Brian Shepard, who's the CEO of he started right before I did, and he has been awesome. Some of the things that he does, for example, when we have the annual security awareness training, how many of you do it in October? Most of us do it in October.
What was that?
How many of you do security awareness training in October?
Yeah, it's usually.
Yeah, most people. The Cybersecurity Awareness Month, we do it in October as well. The first employee to take it, you have the whole month to take it.
Right.
The first employee to take it, every year I've been there, has been Brian Shepard.
Wow.
He comes in that first work morning after October 1st. He sits down and takes it. That's the first thing he does. And so he does it for a purpose. I mean, it's not just because he loves taking it, but he runs a directors meeting. We meet every 2 weeks. And during October, he asks the directors for the status of their employees and their completion. And he tell them, I've already taken it. And how many of you do assessment questions as part of the awareness training? Like, yeah, we do that too. And Brian told me one time that, so basically you give them the information and then you ask them the question. He said, you have to be brain dead not to be able to pass it. He says, what I want to do is I'm going to start mid-year assessing them without giving them information, just give them questions. I want to see how we do then. So that's
a good strategy.
it is a really good strategy. And I was kicking myself for not coming up with it myself. I thought it was a great idea. So the interesting thing is, so we did the mid-year assessment, and everybody, took it. It was mandatory. Everybody had to take the mid-year assessment too. And we had a pass rate, I don't know, it was 98%, something like that. And he said, well, the questions are too easy. Okay, well, we'll work on that. In addition to awareness training, access control is a part of our prevention program. So this includes everything from firewall management to cryptographic systems to ACLs on file shares, everything that controls access to our systems. Authentication stores, two-factor authentication falls into that. Our risk management program, fledgling as it is, falls under prevention, identification of vulnerabilities and vulnerability management, application security, which is its own bucket because it is so important. We have a security community of practice that is run by our software engineering team. We help to facilitate it. They have static code analyzers to run on their code while they're doing development. When their code is checked in back to our Team Foundation server, the code is scanned. If there are any high or critical vulnerabilities, it will not allow them to check the code back in. That's an interesting point because typically you would get a lot of resistance from software engineering for implementing those types of policies. InfoSec didn't implement that policy, software engineering did. It was a software engineering policy. So,
Richard, what are you using to verify the code?
Fortify, HP Fortify, and we don't have any vendors here, so I'll tell you my opinion. I think the static code analyzer is okay. I think it's not smart enough. I think the rate of false positives is too high, but it's serviceable, and it does have some good features in it. In that, if you run a scan on your code and it finds a problem, it'll provide also links to the piece of code that is the problem. It'll tell you a recommendation for how you might possibly consider rewriting that code so it isn't subject to SQL injection or cross-site scripting or whatever the vulnerability was that it found. And it'll take you to literature to explain what that vulnerability is and why it's bad. So it's very good for that. HP Fortify includes WebInspect as a dynamic scanner. WebInspect is awful. It is incredibly slow. What it would like to do, I think, would be fantastic. And the ability to correlate it with the static code is good, but it's just too bulky and slow. And so we're looking at a couple of options to replace that this year. We're looking at Spark. Spark. I can't remember. Spark something. And also Burp Suite has a new product, Burp Suite Enterprise, that we're looking at.
You looked at Veracode.
I did, but we actually looked at Veracode as one of the ones we looked at when we chose Fortify. Our technology stack lended itself really well to HP Fortify. I'm trying to remember, the three that we looked at primarily were Veracode, Fortify, and IBM's AppScan. IBM's AppScan we just couldn't afford.
Exactly.
Go figure. If I'm not mistaken, and I may be wrong about this, so don't hold me to it, but I think that the sweet spot for Veracode was in Linux-based application systems, application delivery systems, and those that technology stack or LAMP stack, and not so much of a .NET SQL stack, which is what we use. So application security is a big piece. Physical security is part of that as well. Everything from the badging to the cameras to everything that you would think would go into physical security. Next slide.
So do you actually meet with the physical security people, or do you have relations with the people who manage them?
We work really close. No, we're separate departments. The physical security is part of our facilities, and facilities reports, the director of facilities reports up to our chief operating officer. Information security reports to our CTO. So no, but we have a terrific working relationship, and so it hasn't inhibited us. We do the physical pen testing for them. We contract it out. We talk to them about what they want to get out of it. We put what we want in for the statement of work. So it's been okay. It hasn't been an issue for us. There are some aspects of it that would be nice. For example, I keep telling Brian, Brian Dudley, who's our facilities director, that when it comes time to replace the badging system, I want to go to a smart card system. We basically have cards that are very easy to replicate, and we currently use for two-factor authentication RSA tokens, and I would love to go to a smart card system. Yeah. So, yeah. The third bucket is detection and response. Intrusion monitoring, these are our IDS systems. These are our log activation systems. These are our SIM. All of these things kind of go into our intrusion monitoring. We are in the process of standing up a SOC today. We hope to have it operational by the end of September. I think our goal is to have it up in operation by the end of September. So that'll be part of that detection and response bucket. Incident response, we have a incident response team. The incident response team is if you're an InfoSec, you have to be part of the incident. You can't opt out of it. We also have folks from our infrastructure engineering team, and we also have some people part of our COP for software engineering that are part of it. The information security team, we drill a lot more often than everybody else. I think a couple of times a year we drill the others. The information security team, we drill every month. We do some sort of a tabletop exercise. We also do sort of live fire exercises with them. We'll contract out, for example, a red team, and we'll, like, in lieu of a pen test, we'll hire a red team. We hired, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Black Hills. We hired Black Hills to do it for us last year. They were great, and nobody on the team knows about it. I know about it, but I'm not going to respond. So, and I want to measure not just the vulnerabilities, because there are more vulnerabilities than we know about, and there are more vulnerabilities than any pen tester is going to find. There's more vulnerabilities than any scanner is going to find. So it's really important to me how well we can detect abnormalities in our systems and in our network, and how quickly we can respond. And with the understanding that with our red team, that if we catch you and we throw you off, that's okay. I'm okay if we break the pen test. I have no problem with that. So we do that. We're also working on developing our own internal ability to do. We're not really big enough to do true red team, blue team, so we'll probably do purple team, where we kind of mix it. Just to get better, and then the goal is just to get better at incident response. Continuity and planning, we have a much more robust disaster recovery and continuity plan than we had. The first hire I made when I came to, it was funny. So I'm interviewing with the guy who was the CIO at the time, a guy named Brad Bersham. And at this point, I've been through 2 rounds of interviews. I'm talking to him, and I know that I'm the only one they're talking to at this point. And so I asked him during the interview, I said, it's sort of a standard question when you get interviewed. You ask, so, what does hitting the ball out of the park in this job look like? What is, if I come in and I hit the ball out of the park, what does that look like? And literally, he said, if in the first year you get a business continuity contingency planner on staff, that's awesome. I had one in 2 months. That was easy. like, man, that's a low bar. So anyway, I hired a guy actually from VHDA to come in and formalize and poke holes in and make fun of our business continuity plan, because it was awful. It's helped that, again, senior leadership in the organization has bought into it. When I first got here, we had a primary data center that is located in our main office. We had a hot site at a co-location somewhere in town, and we had a very small subset of systems over there. For example, our data replication was accomplished via Logship, which meant that it was never going to be very close to a decent restore point objective for it. And you did not have public access to the systems if we had to fail over to, so if we started running from it, that meant that all of these transplant hospital organizations, if a match needed to be run, that meant picking up the phone and calling. We have a 24-hour organ center as part of our organization, and their job is to facilitate organ matches and placement, and even transportation of organs if it needs to be. And pick up the phone, call the organ center, and have them run the match, and then provide them with the results. That would probably work for maybe an hour or 2. If it lasted longer than that, the organ center staff is going to become overwhelmed with water, and the whole thing is going to fail. So I remember talking to our director of IT operations at the time and telling him that if there's anything that's gonna keep you up at night, it needs to be this. Because if our systems fail for whatever reason, it doesn't have to be a security reason. It could fail because there was a power outage and the generator failed. It could be anything. And we can't match organs. I would have a really hard time telling the board why that was. So we had a big investment in it, both people and money and time and effort, and it's been built out, and we regularly fail systems over to we still call it our hot site. We still fail systems over our hot site twice a year. We run from our hot site, when we run production from our hot site twice a year for a day. We have space at our hot site so that our 24/7 organ center, if something really bad happens, they can pick up and move over to our hot site. They've got space there that they can work out of. And we put this in place fairly early on. So when was the World Cycling Championships here? So 2015, yeah, it was 2015. There was so much paranoia and fear about the traffic that was going to be caused by that and the road closures, and because the bike race literally was all around us. Oh, we're not going to be able to get to the office. It's going to be, awful. So we did a lot of exercises getting ready for that, including the plan for the entire 11 days of the bike race. Our organ center worked out at the hot site. And they had never worked out of the hot site ever before that. And they went over there for 11 days and stayed for 11 days. They did their shift changes and everything just all happened there. So we have a fair amount of confidence that if, something bad were to happen, we could run at our hot site. We do have more work to do there. Our hot site is currently located about 20 miles as the bird flies from our office. I think the chances of there being an event that takes out both us and them is really, really remote, but still, we like to be more confident in that. So we have a process where we're moving to a data center. Actually, it's probably going to end up being somewhere in Texas, and then another data center out in California, and then the one here in Richmond that's not in our office. Shut down the data center in our office, and we anticipate having most of that in place by this time next year anyway. Just to give us that added availability piece to it, because that's really important. So almost everything we do is a subset of these three things in there. You can do the next slide. These three big buckets. So what's the most important? What's the most important? Because I can tell you right now, and I know those of you guys work in this industry, you can't do everything you need to do. You've got to make decisions every day about what you're not going to do, because you simply can't. If I had to do everything that needed to be done, I would need a 50-person security staff. It's just not going to happen. So I have to make decisions every day about where I focus the resources on. And I have to let some things slide that folks on my staff make faces about when I say, well, we just can't do that. So I have to make decisions about that. So I have to know what's most important. Training and awareness. Training and awareness. I can tell you that when I first got here, I said training and awareness is most important. For one thing, we had freaking 30% of the people clicking on Slate's emails. So yeah, that was really, really important, because all the other stuff was not going to be any good whatsoever, because the chances of someone clicking on something were really, really high, right? So likelihood, if you do it as a risk management exercise, the likelihood is pretty good something bad is going to happen there. When ransomware first started to be a thing, and particularly when they started hitting healthcare, I made that a huge point of emphasis. I tried to scare as many people with ransomware. Every time I found a story about a hospital that had to be shut down and patients moved because of that, I sent that out to the leadership team. I did presentations to the executive team about, well, what's the worst thing that could happen? And what's the likelihood of that could happen? Well, the likelihood's pretty good. Slate showed us that. So I sat in front of the executive team and told them it's gonna happen. I don't know when it's gonna happen, but it's gonna happen. And if we're not prepared, it could be devastating for us. It could be devastating for the transplant community. It's not like you have a hospital and move a bunch of people. If the worst thing happens, people are gonna die, you know? So it's really, really important that we're good at this. So we got a lot of attention. I got to present at all hands meetings several times about this. We were actually running ransomware drills every month. No, actually, it was every 2 weeks that we were running ransomware tabletop exercises anyway. And probably 3 months after we started trying to scare people, we had a ransom. How many of you had a ransomware incident? We did. So, and someone clicked on something and her computer started behaving abnormally. She immediately realized that the cause and effect, I clicked on something, my computer is behaving of, oh shit. So she literally, rather than pick up the phone and call, we have a hotline for InfoSec. Rather than calling that, she literally ran down to where we were sitting and said, I think I've done something wrong. And so we went back. One of the guys pulled the machine off. Sure enough, it was ransomware. We were able to contain it to a single file share, her primary file share and her machine. Part of it was because she reacted the way she did. Part of it was because we reacted. Part of it was because we were expecting this to happen. So it took us roughly 4 hours to recover. We lost whatever data was stored on that file share that day. We just went to the previous night's backup to restore it. We were lucky, unbelievably lucky. We were able to take the ransomware and explode it on a safe box that we had, and look and see, okay, this is exactly what it does. So we know exactly what to look for. We started scanning everywhere for it. In the meantime, as soon as we see something, we yank it off the network. Fortunately, it was just that one file server. We didn't find it anywhere else. I think there were like 64,000 files on that file server that had been encrypted. And how we got lucky was the writers of this ransomware were clearly the B team. There wasn't really good ransomware. For example, it only stayed resident in memory. It didn't leave a payload anywhere and start replicating that payload anywhere. So it would only infect in memory. So as soon as you turn the machine off, it's no longer infected. So we got really lucky because of that. We got lucky because Kate, who the woman's name that clicked on it, who for thereafter was known as One Click Kate. She had a great attitude about it. She was very upset at the time, but she has allowed us to use her in training and things like that, which has been awesome. That she took the action she did immediately, and it wasn't like 5 o'clock on a Friday, and it's like, oh, man, look at my machine, screw it, I'm going home. That she didn't run downstairs, and it was 5 o'clock Friday, and we had all left. You know, it was a lot of luck. Different timing had happened, a different person, a different reaction, person reaction. It could have been a catastrophic event. So we leveraged that as an event. And it also, for good or for bad, gave me some credibility because I told them it was going to happen. So I did a presentation. I did a lessons learned presentation about that event in 2 different places, like within a week of each other. One was at an organization called AOPO, which is the Association of Organ Procurement Organizations. And they are basically the ones that work with donor families to obtain donated organs for transplant. They do unbelievably important work. And when I did the presentation, I started out, I asked them, just like I asked you guys, how many of you guys have had a ransomware incident? I'd say 75% of the room raised their hand. Good. The guy that's the head of the IT council for AOPO, who was sitting next to me, leaned over and said the other one's a line. About a week later, I was at HIMSS, the Virginia chapter of HIMSS, and I did a very similar presentation there. And I had started out saying, it was actually a much bigger audience there, and I asked them the same thing, same question. One person raised their hand. That is a problem with healthcare right there, because I don't believe for a minute that only if there was all the people working in healthcare organizations, that only one of them that had a ransomware incident at that point. Anyway, I diverged. All right.
Tell them the rest of them were lying.
No, I can't do that. I wouldn't invite me back. I didn't look skeptical, I'm sure. Really? So yeah, so security and awareness is obviously critical.
I would still say that, given, like you say, it's gonna happen, you better have some bulletproof recovery.
Yeah.
And if you spend your money on that first, and then you can try to keep them out or kick them out.
Yeah. Yeah. But, yeah.
You know, what you're saying about drilling people,
Yeah.
because,
Still,
you know,
there are people.
I teach, I know a lot of people that know the theory, you can do squat and back.
Oh, yeah. And I can, despite the fact that we have gotten much better since they, ate our lunch. 4%, that's what, 300, say 400 people? That's what, 40? No, what's that, 80?
It's 16 people.
16, thank you. Get a math. Yeah, 16 people in here that are probably going to click on something bad if they get it. So now we're just hoping they don't get anything bad to click on. So, yeah. Yeah. What else?
I always say people, because of course, users are the weakest link.
They are.
And so people are. most
Absolutely
important.
right.
But I also love Randy Martini's aspect of security, and those who don't know Randy Martini, he's CISO for Virginia Tech. His pretty much concept is, I don't care what comes into my network, all I care about is what's leaving my network. So any type of like ransomware is, they had to contact command and control after you get on PC. So if you prevent them from going to command and control,
Sure.
ransomware doesn't happen.
Sure.
So
We do that too.
right.
And we catch stuff going out of command and control all the time.
Right.
Just so you know.
Yeah, so that's his thing is, I like that too. So it's that, lack of a better word, is the data loss prevention aspect of security, of making sure nothing leaves your network that shouldn't be there.
Right. Right. And I would say that the identification of the CT traffic going out of your network is part of the PSET.
The recovery.
The identification, you can't recover what you didn't see. So you see it. So I think that plays into the PSET. What else is really important? It is all important, but I can't do it all. You guys want to know what I think?
Well, I wanted to answer it a little differently.
Okay.
You mentioned that the first thing is have your upper limit defined.
Yeah.
And I've worked at places that have had that, and other places where it's clearly an afterthought.
Yeah.
An afterthought process. They just wanted reports to justify the expenditure. We weren't really doing
The difference between check the box compliance mentality versus actual security.
So, I mean, I know that's not exactly what you're asking.
I do think that is critically important. If there was a 1A and a 1B, that would be one of them. Because I can tell you, whatever we've done well, there's a lot of things we don't do well, but the things that we do well, we're allowed to do well because of that support. That if Brian Shepard, like, security, it's just, I don't have to spend this money on that, and why do I have to take that productivity away from my people to do this training, If his attitude was that, well, besides the fact that I probably would still be there, it would be bleak. It would be bleak there. But they recognize that the value is the fact that we're not generating any of this data ourselves. People are giving us this data, and our ability to have the community's trust to give us this data, and our very reason for being is dependent on our ability to keep it protected. So,
Well, I don't think there's a single item that's more critical than any others personally. It takes a little bit of everything personally.
Yeah,
I think if you look at all the data breaches that happen, I think probably the number one area that's been hit the most is lack of patching and
sure.
compliance that way. And that feeds into, having your detection and response. I mean,
Yeah.
between that and patching and stuff, if you can
Yeah.
close as many holes as you can,
Yeah,
then you're doing the best job that you can do.
yeah,
But beyond that, like you said, you can't do everything.
yeah.
But
I agree 100% with that.
because while I was working in DOD, they focused primarily on Cat 1s and highs.
Mm.
They never get around to the moderates and never get around to the lows, much less the thousands and thousands of informationals that are out there. Okay. And that's not just DOD, that's everywhere.
Yeah,
Okay.
it is.
It's overwhelming. People can't roll out patches properly.
Yeah.
Microsoft doesn't always patch easily, no matter how it was deployed.
Yeah,
I've seen that number of times. Patches just don't want to apply.
yeah,
You get all the false positives, so you don't know if you're fully compliant or not.
Right.
So I guess probably that's my number one.
yeah. I like that. I like that thinking. Just before I tell you what I think. I have to tell you what I think. It's the way I'm wired.
I always go with the philosophy, the users, no matter how much training you give them, and the training is good, I'm not saying it's not, all it takes is one person.
Yeah,
So I try and find, we try and keep our patches and everything else up to date,
yeah,
but when we had the assessment from DHS, plus did some research from their findings, and found that 80% of malicious links were due to the A files, which is, so we went around to all the PCs, so if they click on, let's say, a malicious link, it's not going to stop all of them,
mhm,
but it'll get the 80%.
yeah,
And then we just keep trying to find other things to reduce what could possibly happen if somebody does something.
yeah. Yeah, all those things are really, really important. And you have to do them. You have to do as much as you can. Patching. Patching is the bane of my existence. I can tell you that.
I had a person sit there and give a perfect analogy for vulnerability management. It's a dog chasing its tail.
Yeah.
Because you can never keep up with it.
Yeah. So I can tell you right now, if I could get everything properly patched, like you said, properly patched, and everything is up to date, everything is properly. First of all, that's never going to happen. But let's say I could. If I could do that, all I would have done was remediated all of the known vulnerabilities.
Absolutely right.
I do want to wrap up here because I think we've gone long, but did anybody else have anything else that they wanted that was different, or? Okay. There's a talk I do occasionally if it's a group I don't like, and since I knew I like you guys, I didn't do that. Is that you guys have all selected a career that you're going to fail at. You're going to fail. If you go into information security, you got to be okay with failing because you're going to fail. Absolutely going to fail. I don't care how much effort you put into patching. I don't care how much effort you put into remediation of vulnerabilities. I don't care how much effort you put into security awareness, how good your staff is, how good your people are. You're going to fail. Something is going to happen. If there is a determined, resourced adversary that wants to get you, they're going to get you. Simple as that. It's as simple as that. So you're going to fail. And okay, so if you go into it with the expectation, all this other stuff we're doing, and you have to do it because you don't want to be the door that's unlocked in the neighborhood. You have to do all those things. If you know that even though you do all those things, you're still going to fail, the most important thing is to find out when you fail. You find out quickly and have a way to respond to it. So getting back to what you said, detection and response. That's my personal opinion. All it is my personal opinion, is that everything else you cannot get perfect. So you better be really good at the other one. Alex Tolchinsky is our CTO. We renamed our CIO CTO because we wanted him to be technical. And when he first started, I told him I have a very good relationship with him. I said, Alex, ask me if it's been breached. And he's like, "If it's been breached," I go, "I don't know." And that'll always be the truth. And that'll always be the truth. And that's why it's for me, the most important thing is to be really good at that last one. So that's my opinion. Questions?
Good presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. No, I enjoy this. It's fun.
What are any thoughts of y'all given to anything going offsite or cloud or not, or
Oh
completely?
my God, that's a great question.
Because so many people now are promoting that
Oh,
as
yeah.
having 10,000 security engineers would be more safe than anything you can keep in the house.
That's for sure. But
Thanks for saying it.
so if those 10,000 people were vested in protecting your information, then I would absolutely agree with it. But I have no idea what they're vested in. They're working for a company whose interest is in getting your information in their systems. So that is what their primary goal is. That said, I mean, I read there's state of security reports that come out all the time. There was one I read, I don't remember who it's by, maybe one of you guys will remember. Every year, the most likely cause of a breach is going to be some sort of a social engineering thing, either a phishing, and that's why I pounded phishing for so long. This year was the first year I read something that said it was misconfigured cloud configuration. Was the most likely cause of a breach. So that said, in one of I love my team to death, but they're InfoSec people, and they just want to say no. And unfortunately, they don't have the authority. I don't have the authority to say no. These are business decisions. Our job is to make sure that the risk is understood, and we talk about what we can do to mitigate that risk, and then be able to articulate in a way that the business will understand and appreciate the residual risk that's left after we've done everything that we can do. But the bottom line is it's ultimately going to be a business decision. There's a lot of drivers, and there's a lot, and I get the appeal of the cloud. I have no tolerance, no patience for I want to go to the cloud, and I ask you why, and you can't tell me why, other than I want to go to the cloud. That's not a good reason.
Sounds cool.
Yeah, and I'm going to drag my heels all the time on that.
All the other CEOs are doing it. I want to
Right,
do it
I
too.
read this thing on the plane, you know?
Are they trying to delegate risk,
No, I don't think so.
or is it more
No,
saving of costs?
It's cost savings, and I'll give you a good business case for us. We have a huge research and analytics group filled with these PhD data scientists whose idea is to take data from these 53 different places, slam it together, run all these things against it, and see what kind of models come up out of it. This is hundreds and hundreds of terabytes of data, lots and lots and lots of compute. It would cost a fortune, and they only need it for like a few days to run this study. And there's just no way we can provide that type of compute in-house for them to do it. So if this is something the business really wants to do, okay, what can we do? Can we de-identify the data? Can we restrict access to it in some way? Do we have, my biggest issues with cloud systems are a couple of things. One is lack of visibility. You know, if something, again, detecting, if something, do I have the ability to really detect if something happens? There's a lot of limits with cloud services to that. The other is it gets into access controls. Okay, if you say you're encrypted, great. Who has the keys? Who has access to those keys? And okay, so those people also have access to it, you know. And if there's a cloud service, if you do some sort of a cloud security access broker solution, where everything gets encrypted by you with your keys before it goes out there. I'm going to sleep a whole lot better. And we're actually going through an exercise right now to find out whether or not this is something that would allow us to be a little more free with how we use cloud services. I don't know if there or not, but it's possible. Ultimately, one of the other things, and this is a new concept for us too, which is sort of frightening when you think about how much data we have, is just data governance concepts. About a year ago, we started a data governance practice as part of our research department. There's a woman who's the director for data governance. She has a very small team, and right after the team was established, she came over from some other area of the research department, and she did a presentation of what data governance is at the director's meeting. And I sit in this meeting and I'm watching her presentation, and all of a sudden the light bulbs came on. It's like, holy crap, this is what I need. I need this. I mean, I need this bad, because she's talking about identifying data lineage. Where is it coming from? Where is it going? She's talking about identification of business owners and data owners, and data owners being able to make decisions about how this data is used. It's like, oh my God, this is awesome. And I'll be honest with you, I probably spend half of my time trying to make sure she's successful in her role. And I remember in the data, in the director's meeting saying that this is sort of an epiphany for me, her presentation. I said, I can tell you right now that I am never going to be successful at what my mission is here if she's not successful. And I can tell you right now, nobody sitting at this table is going to be successful if she's not successful. I said, we need to make sure that data governance is successful here. It is very hard, but it is unbelievably important. And the importance of data governance to security is immeasurable. For example, I've got this data set that, our data scientists want to pull into this, Rube Goldberg machine they've built out in Azure to do analytics on it. Oh, great, okay, I recognize the value of what you're doing. Who owns that data? Okay, I'm going to go to that data owner and say, this is the risk that you're incurring. This is what we can do to mitigate that risk, but this is the risk that remains. Are you willing to accept that risk for that data? And if the answer is yes, have at it. It takes, besides taking some pressure off of me, it's their call. It's their call, and it never was my call.
So is that going to be part of governance, is to give the data owners the
Training.
not only the training,
Yeah.
but the control to sit there and accept risk?
Yeah.
Because normally that's
So
at the CIO or AO. Or,
So that gets into who can be a data owner.
yeah.
And
Wow.
if you're not part of the executive team, you cannot be a data owner. Because for that very reason.
I never really thought about it that way.
For that very reason.
Yeah.
Because there's data that's under my control too. I have data that's under my control. I have an enterprise packet capture system. I have got the last 30 days of PCAP files of every piece of traffic that went onto my network. I think I'm going to load this up on Azure to save some space. It's like, no, it's not my data.
Data governance is
Wow.
the next big thing.
It is.
Wow.
We, Catherine and I went to AOPA, that organization procurement organizations I told you about before, last fall, and did a presentation together called Data Governance and Risk Management, a match made in heaven. And it was all about, and I told the story about my epiphany at the director's meeting when she was presenting this, about how important data governance is. And all of these organizations have big data issues as well. And we present at this organization's meeting all the time. Every meeting they have, we do some sort of a presentation. In hindsight, I look back on the presentations we've done, it was all about how good we are and how good it is for you that we're so good at what we do. But we did this as sort of a journey, and these were the lessons we learned. This was the trouble that we had, and this is why it became so important for us, to do this. And they came up to us afterwards and said that of all the years that UNOS has been coming and presenting, this is the best thing that you guys have ever presented. And and now when they talk about it, they talk about Catherine. They don't talk about the part that I presented. They talk about Catherine because of how much what she does resonates with what they need to do. So yeah, it is.
Actually, at VDH, there's a data governance manager, Mike Sarkisian.
Mike who?
Sarkisian, who actually went through the master's program.
Okay.
I was going through it too. I don't know if you had this.
I used to teach at VCU too.
Yeah.
I don't do that anymore, by the way.
What?
I retired.
Oh,
I just needed less to do.
But so he's been talking about creating a metadata repository.
Mhm.
So going through that whole entire lineage, figuring out
Yeah,
where all the data came from, what does this state mean compared to what this state means? Because you can say date of submission one way, and it means this, and then this date of submission of this program means something completely different. So you can't intertwine them.
so that lineage is really important. So
Yeah.
for example, we talk about data owners and then being able to make decisions about how we use that data. If you've got the lineage piece in place and it's trustworthy, okay, this is our data. Oh, but we got this data from this source over here. Is there a data use agreement associated with them giving us this data? Does that data use agreement have any restrictions on how this data can be used?
So because he wants to develop that
Yeah.
and all the security aspects I gotta do with data agreements, interoperability, security agreements,
Yeah.
all the data owners knowing where all their data is at all
Yeah.
times, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
I'm updating my information security portal
Yeah.
to be more of like a risk management portal for kind of like what Archer is, with
Mhm.
actually having business people access it.
Yeah.
And actually understand it more than anyone can actually understand Archer.
We have Archer. I understand your pain.
Yes. So building that in, but building the metadata repository into it as well,
Yeah.
and then tying it all together,
Yeah.
and it's
So,
going to be beautiful.
so Archer is such a heavy beast.
It's a beast.
It's a beast. When we started the data governance center, we wanted a system for tracking metadata and things like that, and tracking all that lineage. And we ended up going with a product called Calibra for that, which is actually, it's been really good. We've had it, and it is in use after less than a year. But eventually, we want to build a workflow in place for, like, if you want to use data for something. And to be honest with you, I have taken our system inventory and moved it into that, because the systems are there to process and store data. That's why they're there. And so our entire system inventory, all of the system owners, the business owners, all of that is tracked there. We still have a ways to go, but it's
In Calibra?
Calibra, yeah. Calibra. Anything else? I'll stay here all night.
One last question.
Yeah,
Are you guys looking at AI?
yeah. Our research team is, our data analytics team is, they are into machine learning, they're into AI. Other than the fact that, yeah, we want to do it. Yeah, we think we can do some value there. Exactly what they're going to do, they have no clue.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I figured since you're using that large amount of data, you might be
Yeah.
investing into that, or at least looking
Yeah.
into it.
Well, Richard, thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
On behalf of the chapter, I'd like to offer you a challenge coin for presenting
Awesome.
tonight.
Thank you.
If you guys want to stick around, I'm going to start the Stump the Chump, and
What is Stump the Chump?
you'll see in a minute.
All right, I'll stay for a minute for that. Sounds
Okay.
fun.
Do you want me to do the CIS stuff tonight?
I'm sorry.
The first CIS? thing
Oh,
tonight?
yes, I forgot. Go ahead.
Well, I have a presentation, but probably not tonight.
No, go ahead.
How long is it?
Like,
Can you do it in 15?
Yeah,
Okay. You got it? All right.
I'll get my rubber duck back from you.
Can we upload the presentation?
I'll email it to you if you want. Yeah. I actually thought I meant to do that today, but I didn't have time because I always like to have like backup after backup after backup. So I was going to bring out a thumb drive. I was going to email it to you, and I was also going to put it up on my OneDrive. The emailing part never happened. But I'll bring it to you. Thanks. Yeah.
It stole your methods. This is clean.
It's cleanish.
Yeah.
Found in the parking lot. Seen it.
Yeah.
It's been on the COD tour, so I don't know how.
Oh, Lord.
Hey, guys.
Oh.
Plenty of pizza left. Please eat up.
Dude.
Hey, Brandon.
You're up. I'll cook yours.
Should I stand over there?
Yeah.
Sure.
Stay where you're sitting.
I can stay where I was sitting, yeah.
All right, so changes in presenting CIS control series.
I turned around my phone.
Actually, I'm just going to sit down. They can still hear me.
Got
Got loud enough voice.
All right. Let me know when you're ready.
Yep. So I was asked to do the first one of these. So basically, CIS has a 20 different controls that they all say that we should be doing. And it used to be the SANS top 20. Now it's the CIS control series. And so the first one is about inventory and control. So the definition, you're fine. So it's control of hardware and assets. The definition is actively manage, which means inventory, track, and correct all hardware devices on the network so that only authorized devices are given access, and unauthorized and unmanaged devices are found and prevented from gaining access. So pretty much that means that we want to make sure that devices that are supposed to be on our network are on our network, all devices that aren't. So why? So unprotected systems on the network, of course, could be attacked. So if they're not being kept up to the patching levels, of course, they're more susceptible to attack. Devices which come and go off the network are most susceptible. So laptops that are traveled with are going to different locations, plugging into different things, could gain different malwares and bad items. So we don't want that. We want to make sure that they're being protected as well as possible. And as well as you have BYOD, people bring their personal devices, cell phones and all that, getting access to your network. It's they have a lot of problems too, and you want to make sure you're tracking those. Too fast. Manage control of devices manage control of all devices plays a critical role in planning and executing system backup, incident response, and recovery, which we are covering tonight. And then authorized devices could be devices installed on your network by an attacker to steal information. So Raspberry Pis, WAPs, and rubber duckies. So things that are plugged into your network stealing your information. And so my quote here that you want to remember, you can't defend what you don't know you have. Go ahead. So the main points is utilize an Active Directory tool to identify devices connected to the organization's network and update hardware asset inventory. And by the way, the main points here actually come from CIS. This is what they are identifying as their main points. Maintain an accurate and update inventory of all technology assets with the potential to store or process information. This inventory shall include all hardware assets, whether connected to the organization's network or not. And the larger the network gets, the harder it gets to have 100% control. So organizations that are huge, such as VDH, we have 100 locations, 4,000 plus employees all across the Commonwealth. It's a little bit ridiculous to control, even though we have pretty good hardware controls. It's still, we ran into several incidents recently that are interesting. But so these are some of the devices you want to track. My favorite thing that I want to implement in my environment is protection of USB drives, so thumb drives, that pretty much having a series of thumb drives that are the only ones that are allowed on the network. So preventing all other USB connections, except for mouses and keyboards, of course, but thumb drives, you only can use ones that we issue to. But these are the ones that you want to look out for. But how to, so there are several tools out there. I want to be at least vendor agnostic as much as possible, but there are plenty of tools out there that allow you to track this inventory. Active Directory is a very good one. It allows you to authorize devices onto your network. You want to make sure you have endpoint authentication. So this is making sure that gets onto port security. So only authorized devices are allowed to plug into your network. Group policy, this is what I was thinking about implementing with the USB drives. I bought a series of iron-port encrypted USB drives, series 1 million to 1.1 million, and then don't need 100,000 devices, but USB drives. But get the point, you can say these are the only one, this series of USB drives or iron-port are the only ones that are allowed to be on my network. So even if someone bought the iron-port from a different vendor brought in, they couldn't use it because it's not in our series. And then periodic walkarounds. I always found walking around the building and looking at people's things like, huh, that's a different mouse. Where did you order that from? Or that's a different monitor that's not allowed, or looking into where the wiring is, making sure that there's no vampire clips on anything. So those are some how-tos. That's the last slide. Yep. So, any questions? I know it's a brief run through, but this one, the first 4 CIS ones are pretty basic, pretty easy to understand. They get more complicated when you go down because number 1's easy, number 20 is a little bit more difficult to manage.
So then on the USB side, that's the question we had. We hadn't really had anybody approach this. I haven't found a solution for that. Where was that within the sales of your going GPO calls?
Yeah, so that we haven't implemented it, but you could create a GPO that's, you could order a series of USB drives from a vendor, and you can say, I want them all in a serial, and then in your GPO, you basically identify the manufacturer. You could identify the manufacturer, the serial length, and all that, and those are the only USBs that are allowed on your devices. You plug anything else
I wasn't
in?
aware that was an option.
Some of those come with their own management software to allow you to register them as well.
Any other questions?
All right.
State your handles.
Oh, yeah, I'll send it over to the group.
All right, we've got 5 minutes. I don't think we're gonna get through all the slides, but we can start. This is Stump the Chump, which we have on a regular basis on our chapter meetings. And our Jeopardy style questions from chess from the ISC score body. So first question, which of the following is best described as an access control model that focuses on subjects and identities and identifies the objects that each subject can access? That's a question. Here are the answers. A, an access control list, an implicit denial list, a capability table, a rights management matrix.
ELPA.
I'm sorry?
ELPA. And access controls.
Who says A? Who says B? C? D?
I actually think I would go with A. A is a simple answer.
Actually, no one raised their hand for C.
Oh. Yeah,
All right, this was a long one. Jim's organization-wide implementation of IDaaS offers broad support for cloud-based applications. The existing infrastructure for Jim's company does not have an in-house identity management staff and does not use centralized identity services, but uses Active Directory for AAA services. Which of the following choices is the best option to recommend to handle the company's on-site identity needs? All right. This is a trick question. Read it one more time. And here are the choices. A, integrate on-site system using OAuth. Use an on-premise third-party identity service. C, integrate on-site system using SAML. D, design an in-house solution to handle the organization's unique needs.
Charlie.
All right, Charlie?
Yep.
Any other answers?
Oh, we would absolutely do D.
All right,
We would try it.
the actual answer is B.
Really?
All right, question 3, which of the following is not a weakness of Kerberos? A, KDC is a single point of failure. B, compromise of KDC would allow attackers to impersonate any user. C, authentication information is not encrypted. And D, it's susceptible to password guessing.
It's Delta.
Man, these are hard.
B,
Oh, I answered people. I got 2 wrong so far.
y'all are on a roll tonight. It's actually
Yeah.
C.
Yeah.
Because it is.
Yeah.
All right, question number 4. Voice pattern recognition is what type of authentication factor?
Something you are. You are.
Type 1,
Oh.
type 2, type 3, or type 4?
That's 3.
That's not very helpful.
Who said type 3? Very good.
Got one.
Type 1 is something you remember, type 2 is something you have, type 3 is something you want. There's no such thing as type 4.
All right, if Susan's organization requires her to log in with a username, a PIN, a password, and a retina scan, how many distinct types of factors has she used? A, 1, B, 2, C, 3, D, 4.
Beta.
2. Okay. Well, you gotta get better. Let's B. Question 6. Which of the following items are not commonly associated with the restricted interfaces? Shells, keyboards, menus, database views. Which of the following items are not commonly associated with restricted interfaces? And Shanda's just spoke about this. A, B, C, D. All right, you guys are getting about it, the keyboards. Question 7, what type of attack can be prevented by using a trusted path? The choices are a dictionary attack, a brute force attack, man in the middle attacks, login spoofing.
C.
Charlie.
Charlie?
C.
B?
C.
C?
C.
Okay, anyone else? Login spoofing.
You explain that?
Go back to the question again.
But is that a login attack? I put man in the middle of it.
Yeah, and actually, man in the middle, which seems like the right answer, that is, man in the middle is actually taking advantage of the trusted path. So, yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
All right, what major issues often result from decentralized access control? Again, what major issues often result from decentralized access control?
Lack of ability to audit.
A, access outage may occur. B, control is not consistent. C, control is too granular. And D, training costs are high.
B. B.
The
B.
driver-
B is a boy.
Good answer.
Yeah.
All right, call back to a home phone number is an example of what type of factor. Again, call back to a home phone number is an example of what type of factor. Type 1, somewhere you are. Type 3, and D is geographic.
And then neither one of them are factors.
All right.
Okay.
That's, it's gotta be one.
A.
It's gotta be A, yeah, A.
C
Right.
is disagreeable.
Call back to a home phone number
Something
is
you
an
know,
example of what type of
Right.
something you
factor.
know,
It's not
or have.
something you know, which is type 1. It's something you are.
Geographic, if you didn't have somewhere you are, since it's above the
Just because it doesn't say a
Something
type,
you have would be type 2, but that's not.
I'm giving you a hint, just because it doesn't have a type, you're supposed to know what the types are.
Somewhere,
I'm guessing gonna be B.
but,
Good guess.
but,
Somewhere you are.
But that's not really.
It's not really a type. Something you are, somewhere, something you have, something you know, something you are. Which one?
Somewhere you are.
That's the ace buster.
Yeah.
That's a bad question.
It is.
One of the
That's
throw-out
a horrible
questions.
question. All right, last question. Kathleen needs to set up an Active Directory trust to allow authentication with an existing Kerberos K5 domain. What type of trust does she need to create? A, shortcut trust. B, a forest trust. C, an external trust. And D, a round trust.
B,
Kathleen needs to set up an Active Directory trust to allow authentication with an existing Kerberos K5 domain. What type of trust does she need to create?
B,
B.
But it's
Base,
it's a different domain, it's within.
How many B?
Domain is same for you.
How many Cs? Any As? Any Ds?
I'll go with D just because it sounds better.
You go with D?
I want it to be D.
a round trust.
I guess it's not a separate domain,
Yeah.
so it won't be enforced.
Yes, it wouldn't be forest because it's within the same forest.
Right.
The first one, I forgot what the first one was, I don't even know what that was. So,
All right, folks. Thank you for coming. Stick around. Is there any pizza left?
Yeah, there's plenty.
Have at it.
What do you
because I both taught systems management classes, networking classes. No,
Please. Oh, stick around because we have a raffle for a gift card.
My undergraduate degree was.
I got one. No, I got it older.
You got.
Yeah.
Computer science. And then.
I got one from RBA.
Yeah, I went back to 6.